Good afternoon. My name is Dona Kim Murphey with Doctors for America. I oppose approval of lecanemab and any compound in this class of monoclonal antibodies because of safety and efficacy being unclear, and particularly for minoritized groups. I'm a neurologist and neuroscientist with experience in brain safety monitoring and in advocating for inclusion and impacted party-centered research in clinical trials. I started a public benefit company and work closely with Black and immigrant family caregivers in eliminating racialized health disparities in dementia. I'm also a support caregiver to my 95-year-old grandmother with mild dementia, and with a personal history of brain infection, I have a 31-fold risk of dementia myself. You can imagine why I desperately want to solve this devastating condition. My grandmother technically has only mild dementia by existing clinical scales. But with persecutory delusions, she has so depleted my mother, one of the kindest people that I know. She is constantly on edge and physically sick. Many caregivers will be outlived by their loved ones with this disease. I live with mild cognitive effects of a prior brain infection and long COVID and shudder at the burden I will create for my own children if I live to be old enough. The stories I've heard and helped patients and their families navigate are as tragic. But still, I want a treatment that is safe and effective for my patients, my family, and eventually for me. I'm alarmed at how lecanemab has been developed and by conflicts of interest that drug sponsors, their consultants, and organizations who should be first and foremost informed and unbiased advocates for families have had in pushing for accelerated approval despite serious side effects for this drug. Nearly 1/5 of patients on lecanemab had brain bleeding. Supposedly only 1% were symptomatic. But monitoring for side effects is not as careful as for clinical endpoints. That EEG, for instance, was not used for a class of drugs known to cause visual disturbances and confusion, both of which could be caused by seizures, is an example of the lack of rigor in assessing for dangerous off-target effects. Then there is the question of efficacy. Statistical significance is not clinical significance, as we've heard over and over again. Quality of life measurements do not ask whether the degree of change matters to the patients and families. And how can I advise all families, particularly those disproportionately impacted by dementia, when serious risk and questionable benefit of therapy are an issue? With racialized incidence of Alzheimer's and brain bleeding in Black patients, and with their significant underrepresentation in this trial, I cannot, as a neurologist, advise this group with the lecanemab data. Also, Asian Americans comprise 7.2% of the population in the United States, hardly trivial and hardly included. Inclusion of international Asians, when we know so many of the risks in dementia are modifiable and context dependent, is not a substitute. Finally, the cost of this drug in time and money will be prohibitive. Infusions and frequent MRIs with a projected $26,000 a year cost will put this drug out of reach for many of our families. I ask that the FDA reconsider full approval of lecanemab and require that at least a registry be performed as per CMS recommendations for accountable post-market monitoring. Thank you.